how stuff works. You're not gonna win here.
No,
Wait, don't
no.
move. Stop moving so fast.
No!
Do you want to hold my baby?
What?
Would you just give the baby one squeeze and then we'll talk? Because I think it's gonna change our bond.
No!
It's very rejuvenating.
I'm plenty rejuvenated.
You'll get more so when you go chest to chest with this magical
You don't
child.
get to have a heartfelt conversation with me right
Oh,
now.
the baby will see her.
Ah!
You're the reason I had her, okay? I thought that if I did a decent job raising her, that there was a chance she was gonna turn out like you. And that got me excited because you are a wonderful person. And I like being around you.
Then why didn't you come see me?
I couldn't.
I wanted to be with you guys so badly. But this thing isn't what I thought it was.
Look, bad things are gonna happen. It makes us who we are. But good things happen too, you know? Like you happen. And she happens.
Hey, I don't...
And you
Listen.
are so bad at holding a baby.
We got your location, Peter.
Wait, no. You do not have my location. Over.
Send everyone.
No, Miles, I didn't know. I promise you. Please, man, let's talk about this.
We did.
Good talk.
Welcome to Superhero Cinephiles Podcast. I'm your host, Perry Constantine, and today we are going to be discussing Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, the 2023 sequel to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and joining me to discuss this is the Pod Breaks, Alex Marcus. Alex, how you doing today?
Hey Perry, I'm doing great. Always happy to be on Superhero Cinephiles with you.
Always good to have you on as well, and also always good to be with you on over on the Pod Break stuff too. So why don't you remind people a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm the podcasting director for popbreak.com. That's a pop culture website that has tons of great written content, photos, and podcasts, which is the part of the site that I focus on. So over there, I am one of the hosts of TV Break, which is a monthly podcast that kind of goes the ins and outs of the world of TV, just like news, reviews, talk of streaming wars, which has been really heating up recently as all of the big streaming conglomerates try to buy each other. So we've been talking about that a lot over there. Over on Bill versus the MCU, another podcast that I do for the Pop Break. It's our Marvel Rewatch podcast, and that's kind of why I'm here today, because we're kicking off our year of Spider-Man. We're going to do 8 straight months of Spider-Man reviews over there, covering like the original trilogy, the Andrew Garfield duology, the animated stuff, even those pesky Sony spin-off movies that I think we all pretend haven't happened, but we lived through the trauma and we want to air that out on mic. So we're going to be talking about that too. So that's why I thought it was awesome that we could come on and talk about Spider-Man over here as well.
Awesome. Yeah, we just a few months back we covered, or a few weeks now, I think, on the podcast feed, depending on when you're listening to this or when these episodes come out. Time is a flat circle now, but we covered Madam Web, and kind of wish I didn't have to do that.
Yes.
But are you going to be doing like any of the 70s live action stuff, like the Nick Hammond one or the Japanese Spider-Man TV show?
No, unfortunately not. We did have to draw the line somewhere. So we're not doing that stuff, but we're basically every month we're going to be doing like a series of films. So we're going to do a month on the Spider-Man Raimi trilogy. We're going to do a month in February, which I think is when this will be coming out. You can listen to our coverage of the Amazing Spider-Man duology with Andrew Garfield. We're doing an episode on the animated 2 films. When we originally planned this out, we had hoped that the third one would be coming out by the time this happened, but alas, that is delayed. And then we're going to do the Venom trilogy, and we're going to do those pesky spin-off movies, like I said. And we've already covered them once, but it was 4 years ago, so we're going to cover the Tom Holland movies one more time ahead of Brand New Day. And that is why we're covering it, because we wanted to build to really, we're so excited for Spider-Man Brand New Day, and we wanted to do a proper tribute to it. So that's why we're covering everything up until that point.
And we had you on here before to talk about Homecoming as well, so people can go back on our feed and listen to you talk about that as kind of a preview.
That's right. That is the Spider-Man movie that I have spoken about the most on mic because I not only did it for my old movie podcast, Cinema Joe's, which is now in hiatus, but we also covered it once for Bill versus the MCU. We covered it, me and you, on Superhero Cinephiles. Also, I have another podcast through the Pop Break called It's Complicated, a Tom Holland podcast, where me and my good friend Manish Mathur go through the entire filmography of Tom Holland, and we've been doing that for the past year. And we covered Spider-Man: Homecoming over there too. So there's no shortage of me talking about Spider-Man: Homecoming on the internet because it is maybe my favorite Spider-Man movie of all time.
I'm at least as far as live action goes, I think I'd agree with you on that. Yeah, it's definitely up there. And I made a mistake earlier. I referred to it as the pod break, but as you corrected, it is the pop break, so apologies for that. But before we get into today's film, why don't you tell people what you're interested in lately? Anything that's grabbing your attention, not necessarily for any of the podcasts, but just in general?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been catching up on a lot of movies, a lot of TV shows from the last year that, I was too busy to watch. But the thing that has honestly stolen my heart more than anything is a show from Canada, which if you're in the United States, you could watch on HBO Max. If you're in other places, I don't know. But it's called Heated Rivalry. Many people know it better as the gay hockey show because it is a show, it's a romance about these two closeted professional hockey players who meet the summer before their rookie season. They're kind of 1 and 2 in the fake NHL draft that year, and they end up having an illustrious affair that spans a decade and starts out in a very kind of intense sexual place, but ends in a very pure and beautifully romantic place by the end of the sixth episode. So if you haven't watched it, strongly encourage you to do so. There's minimal hockey, so if you're afraid of too much hockey, don't worry. It's really much more about the relationships, and it's based off of a series of romance novels that is called Game Changers, and I've heard is very good as well. So that is my strong recommendation for that.
Cool. You know what? You're the second person I've heard of it. I'm a regular listener to the Majority Report with Sam Cedar, and Emma Vigeland was raving about that on like their year-end episode. She had like a full 5-10 minutes just talking about how much she loves it, and everybody else is just like, we haven't seen it. We don't know what you're talking about.
Well, I love to hear that because it should go in front of as many people as possible. Because it's so wonderful, and it is an adult romance in a way where like it treats the sexuality as like a big part of it. It doesn't shy away from that in a way that we don't really get a lot in major media in general, never mind about a queer couple. But it also is deeply romantic and it handles all that like yearning and pining and stuff so well. And when it builds into something more substantive, it is just so fulfilling. So it's really, really great show that I really strongly recommend people check out.
I've got something tangentially related to that with so here in Japan we have Unext, which is kind of like where all the HBO Max content ends up over here. And we've been subscribed to that. I'll have to see if Heated Rivalry is on there. I haven't checked that out. But what I've been watching is also on that service. And I've got two things that I was kind of like dipping in and out of lately. One is Arrow. I am beginning work on a serial that's going to feature the Golden Age superhero who is also called the Arrow, but was a former U.S. intelligence agent and just like kind of updating it and remixing it and that kind of stuff. And I kind of wanted to get some inspiration a little bit, so I dipped back into the first season of Arrow. And at the time when it was on the air, I was a little bit mixed on it because as much as I enjoyed it, it did have this kind of feel where it felt like it was embarrassed to be a superhero show, and then it wasn't. Then after when the second season rolled out, that was after Avengers came out, and then they're like, "Oh, superheroes are popular now. We should actually lean into that." And then they kind of went too far in the opposite direction by the end of the show. So I've been dipping back into the first season of Arrow, and also, our mutual buddy Anthony Desiato over on his Digging for Kryptonite podcast, he was recently doing a spotlight of episodes on Lois and Clark, the New Adventures of Superman, and I've had a mixed relationship with that show, not the least of which is because Dean Cain is a fucking douchebag. But but hearing him talk about it, I'm like, I liked it when I was a kid, and I went back to it a few years back when I had HBO Max. I'm just like, oh God, this is rough. This is not that good. And then hearing him talk about it with his guests, I'm like, well, let me dip in a little bit. So I watched the pilot again and watched the first regular episode of the first season, and I still kind of mixed on it, to be honest. I don't think I'll continue with the rewatch too much though.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's it.
But sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that's a show that I watched a little bit as a kid, but I was pretty young when it aired in syndication in the US back in the day. So I didn't have a ton of exposure to it. I remember mostly it feeling like, well, there's Superman and there's Lois and Clark, but it doesn't seem to have anything to do with like Superman, like at least as far as I knew him from like the animated show and stuff like that. So I was never super drawn to that show, but I am, famously a big fan of the Arrowverse. Arrow, not my favorite of all of the Arrowverse shows, probably third behind Supergirl and The Flash, but yeah, I think I was even on this podcast, I believe, once upon a time, talking about one of the big crossovers.
We talked about Crisis on Earth X. That's right.
Yeah, so I'm very excited to hear your journey through Arrow because if you commit to that, it's a long and expansive journey. The team is going to blow up and come back together about a million times between now and the end of the final season. So that's a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna go all the way through it again. I think I'm just gonna stick because it's mostly just kind of like inspiration for this series I'm doing. So I think I'll just stick to the more grounded stuff, like the first and the second season, and after that maybe I'll dip in here and there. But I don't think I'm committing to a full on rewatch just yet.
Yeah, just stick to the Tommy episodes. That'll get you through it pretty fast.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anyway, today we are talking about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse 2023 sequel to Into the Spider-Verse. And what was your experience with these Spider-Verse films and Miles Morales and the Spider-Verse concept?
Yeah, so I'm not a big comic reader, despite the fact that I'm huge into the MCU and have podcasted about a million Marvel things now. Never was big on comic books. My entry point was really like the animated shows as a kid growing up, and then like the X-Men and Spider-Man movies as a teenager. So I didn't follow the original like inception of Miles Morales in the comics, but I definitely was aware of it because it was a big cultural deal at the time. Like Peter Parker is dead. There's a new kid. He's biracial. He's modeled off of Barack Obama, kind of like that was a lot of the kind of early conversations about him. And then I did kind of get kind of tangentially sucked into the Spider-Verse storyline as it happened across the comics because I just heard that it was happening. I was like, oh, that's really interesting. If I were to read comics, I would like to find out what that's about. And I think I watched some YouTube videos and things like that and did some reading of like sources around the comics instead of just reading the comics because that's how I am sometimes. But it was a cool idea. Dan Slott, is a legend in
That's actually
Spider-Man
Brian Michael
comics.
Bendis.
Oh, really? It wasn't Dan Slott who did the
No, no,
Spider-Man
no. It was
Spider-Verse?
the Spider-Verse. I thought you were talking about Miles Morales. Yes, Dan Slott did
Yeah.
the Spider-Verse.
Yeah, I know. Brian Michael Bendis originated the character of Miles Morales. Yeah, that's correct. But yeah, so I thought it was really cool. I always love a multiverse story that like just energizes my brain. I know now they're so passé because we just got inundated by it, but there's something about like alternate Earths and what could be if things were just slightly different. Like it just excites my imagination. So I love those kinds of stories. And when I heard that they were going to be doing an animated Spider-Man movie, at first what we learned was that it was just an animated movie. We didn't know what it was going to be. We didn't know which Spider-Man it was going to be about. We didn't know, is this going to be kind of more for kids? And I was kind of like, all right, Sony is a mess. We'll see how this goes. But then the more that we learned, the more that we were like, oh, it's actually going to be about Miles Morales. It's going to be the Spider-Verse, which had just happened basically when this was being developed. I was like, oh, okay, this seems really cool and interesting. And then the voice cast was really fun. A big John Mulaney fan, of course, big Haley Steinfeld fan. So it's like, okay, I'm very excited to now see what this is. And also by the prospect of having like an animated movie that has a really big budget and can animate Spider-Man action in a way that you can't get in live action and that you certainly didn't get on like the 90s animated cartoon. That was also a really exciting component to it. And then I saw it in theaters. I brought my nephew, who was like 6 at the time, and it was like a very nice bonding experience for us. And it was incredible. I was like, oh my God, they like revolutionized animation. So I was a huge fan of it. And then, hearing that it got greenlit for sequels and it was going to be this big 2-part sequel, I was like, oh, I can't wait. And we saw the promos for it, and it looked incredible. And yeah, then we'll talk about what I thought of the actual movie. But what is your background with the Spider-Verse content?
So I was not really, I think this is when Miles came out. There was a time when I was kind of separated from comics just because being in Japan and everything, it's hard to get access to them, at least when he debuted. Now they've got digital stuff, so it's much easier. And I had pretty much checked out Miles Morales debuted in the Ultimate Universe, which was kind of like this side universe where they rebooted the Marvel characters, but in like the 21st century. So so Spider-Man was now Peter Parker was now a teenager in the year 2001, as opposed to 1963 or the sliding time scale. Captain America gets thawed out in a post 9/11 world and all that kind of stuff. So it was really kind of like it into mixed degrees of success. Like looking back now, the Ultimates, Ultimate X-Men, a lot of the Mark Miller stuff has aged like spoiled milk. But the Bendis stuff with Ultimate Spider-Man was pretty cool. And around the time when they were in the pre-production stage of the Amazing Spider-Man movie, there was, I think it was actually I can't remember his name, but he co-hosts Fat Man Beyond with Kevin Smith. I am so sorry, I can't remember his name right now. But he
That's
wrote
Mark
an article.
Bernardin.
Mark Bernardin, thank you. And he wrote an article about how Peter Parker's story actually works very well for a black kid in Queens, right? He's from Queens. He comes from a single parent household, lower on the economic income scale and all this kind of stuff. And he's like, yeah, Peter Parker could actually be a black kid. And one of Stan Lee's whole things, like the idea of Spider-Man wearing a full face mask, was so you never knew what he could be under there. So he could have been a black guy under there. And this actually then sparked this whole online fan campaign of Donald Glover should be cast as Peter Parker. In Community, Donald Glover even kind of got into it by wearing Spider-Man pajamas in a few episodes as well. And that was kind of the impetus for Bendis to decide, we've got Peter Parker in the main universe. So in the Ultimate Universe, I'm going to kill him off and I'm going to replace him with this new character, Miles Morales, this biracial black Puerto Rican kid who gets bitten by a spider and becomes the new Spider-Man. And yeah, it is a pretty good comic. Like, I'm kind of mixed on Bendis's stuff, but when it comes to Spider-Man, generally pretty solid. And then we had Dan Slott. I love Dan Slott's Spider-Man run. I will defend it against anyone. So, come at me, Spider Twitter. But I loved his run, and I especially loved the Spider-Verse story. And as for Into the Spider-Verse, I wasn't necessarily that interested in it right away. I mean, I was going to see it eventually, but I couldn't see it in theaters because it was in Japan. Animated movies from abroad, they tend to be released in theaters only with Japanese audio dubbing. They don't tend to release them with the English dub, the original English audio and Japanese subtitles, which is what they do with a lot of live action movies here. And so it wasn't until it came out on home video that I was actually able to watch it. And my God, that thing blew me away. Like the animation and everything. It's like, because in most of the time, these animated movies in the West, they're treated as kind of like a side thing. Unless it's like Disney or something like that, or Pixar, it's not seen as something like very important, especially when it comes to these superhero stuff. Most of them are just direct to video. But this one had such a lot of effort put into it and a lot of care, and the animation was freaking incredible. And that was actually kind of the first time that I was introduced to Miles Morales, was through that movie. And it was after that that I decided to then later check him out in the comics. And in fact, I used this movie in Into the Spider-Verse in my one of my English classes, where I use English movies to help teach them about English grammar and everything like that. And of the 3 movies we showed that semester, Spider-Verse was like far and away like everybody's favorite. Like the students just absolutely fell in love with it. So yeah, that was kind of my journey with it. And so now let's dive into Across the Spider-Verse. Now, I also came late to this because this came out, I think I actually saw it on the plane on the way back from a trip to America was the first time I saw it. So not the best way to experience it, but I did like
Oh
it. And
my
then as soon as I got
gosh.
home, yeah.
That
But when I
like that
got
like
home,
breaks my
I
heart
watched.
to know that that's how you watch this for the first time, because the visual spectacle of this movie is absolutely astounding, and to think that like you're watching it on the back of somebody's seat, that's sad. I'm sorry.
I will say this though. I did like it so much that as soon as I got back to Japan, I got it on VOD and I watched it right away on my big screen TV with my sound system and all
Okay,
that.
that's good. I'm very happy to hear that.
What did you think of it? What are some of your thoughts jumping back into it for this rewatch?
I So like Into the Spider-Verse is one of the best movies of that year when it came out in 2018. So this had like a really high bar to clear, and there's a lot of promotion ahead of time about how like, oh, they're like really innovating in the space and they like revolutionized animation all over again. And I thought like, okay, that's cool. And also the idea of like in the first movie, it's a bunch of different animated characters from different universes coming to Miles's universe and getting to see how like each of those characters have a different animation style, and it's like a fun way of like exploiting the multiverse thing. But then this movie promised going to the other Earths, right? Experiencing what those different worlds are actually like. And that was really exciting to me. So I was really looking forward to this. And I was absolutely blown away. It exceeded every possible expectation. Like we'll get to like how it ends, and then the frustration of like they initially told us that the next one was going to come out the next year, and then like, well, actually, now it's how many years later, and we still
Mhm.
haven't seen it. So that's a little bit frustrating because it very much ends in a way where you're like, okay, this was not a full movie. But what I got, it was just absolutely spellbinding. The story, the emotional story is really strong. The character work and that you get, the arcs, the detail, the what you get out of especially Miles and Gwen is really, really compelling. But the visuals are just complete. I've just never seen anything like it. It's truly beautiful art more than anything else. Like especially like that 20-minute opening prologue, basically, where you're kind of seeing what Gwen's universe is like and catching up to her from like we got a little bit of an insight into what her life was like in the first movie, but this is really like expanding on that and really getting to marinate in it. It's just some of the most beautiful animation I've ever seen on screen before, and that's just the first 20 minutes. So I loved this. I thought it was one of the best films of the year when it came out. And it was such a gift to rewatch it. Where I'm going to be rewatching it in a couple of months for the Bill versus the MCU podcast that I do. But I knew I liked this so much that I was like, I don't mind. I will watch this and then watch it again in another month and a half because I'm like so excited to get a chance to see this a second time.
Dude, I'm so with you on everything you just said there, especially that opening prologue. Like it grabbed me right from the start. And and especially the art style. Like I didn't notice it so much the first time, but this latest viewing, I was paying a lot more attention to some of the side details. And yeah, it is beautiful. And credit has to be given to the creators of that original Spider-Gwen comic book. So this was the artist was Robbie Rodriguez on it, and also the colorist. I have to give credit to the colorist too, because it was Rico Renzi was the colorist, because his work also really helped define it. I know you're not a comic book guy, but if you ever have a chance to read that original Spider-Gwen series, that is definitely worth a read, and it is very faithful in that opening 20 minutes to what they did in that original series. um yeah, spellbinding, exactly. Like Spider-Gwen has become one of my favorite characters of Marvel in the recent years, and hey, and Haley Stanfield does such a great job of voicing her both in Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse. And I was honestly, I would have watched just a whole movie of just Spider-Gwen just based on those 20 minutes, because the animation style, especially when she's like um and then when she's trying to stop the vulture, and like the how she's using the webbing and spinning around like that, like something you said earlier, you said like stuff that you can't do in live action. Boom, right there,
Yeah.
that whole sequence perfectly captures that, because I was thinking the exact same thing as I was watching that sequence.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, when the first movie came out, I remember there was like, okay, we're gonna do Into the Spider-Verse 2. We're gonna do a Spider-Gwen spin-off. We're gonna do another like maybe a TV show. Like they were like, we're just going all in on this. And then ultimately, like the production for this movie was so ambitious that they clearly sidelined any other plans. But I have to believe that a lot of what they maybe would have done with Spider-Gwen ended up in this movie. And I think rightfully so, because Gwen is such a strong character. And I think especially if you're going to split this movie up into two parts, which they've made the decision to do, it really helps to have a second protagonist who is as strong and complex and just like incredibly, it just like grabs your attention every second that she's on screen as Gwen is. So it was really smart that like in the first movie she had a lot to do. She was clearly not just Miles's love interest. She was a member of the team and an important person, and probably like second to Miles in terms of like the importance of the story. Maybe Peter, and then Gwen were like kind of on equal footing in different ways. That's an aspect of that movie. But I think it was very smart of them to be like, no, we're going to lean into Gwen. We have the space, we have the time. We're going to really let her be the other pillar to this story that we're telling.
Yeah, I think that, as much as that story, it focused on Miles, but it was also trying to give us a good deal of Peter, and a lot of it was like him like coming to terms with his like midlife crisis that he's going through in that movie. And Gwen was probably just intended to be like more of a supporting character in that, but I think she was such a breakout star that that's why they decided to and I think because they'd be started work on some of the the basic ideas of this story for Across the Spider-Verse before Into the Spider-Verse came out. And I think as they were working on it, they probably realized they had something really special with Gwen. And that was kind of the reason why they kind of front loaded her in this movie. And I'm glad they did because I thought she was incredible here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, also during this time, she's a big success in the comics. I think a lot of people were I think this is specifically like the moment, like between when Spider-Verse came out and this movie aired. I could be incorrect because again, this isn't my primary area of expertise, but I'm pretty sure that she had like a pretty successful solo outing. They were kind
Yeah.
of finding ways to get her into the main books as much as possible, and doing other fun things like, Spider Pool or Gwen Pool, right? Which was like a what if Gwen Stacy was also like Deadpool or
It's
something.
kind of
I
like
never really.
yeah, I'm not completely sure on exactly what Gwenpool is, but it's not,
Yeah, I never went that deep on that
it
one.
kind of feels like that, but it's actually something, she's kind of more like Marvel's Harley Quinn in some ways, I think.
Okay, sure. But I mean, I think the point of that is that like Gwen was a really popular character that
Yeah.
people were excited about. And also like we couldn't stop getting rumors about like, oh, Emma Stone's going to come back as Gwen, like they're going to do a live action Spider-Gwen with Emma Stone and like I never believed that was actually going to happen. But I
Dude,
did
that is
think that
my
there was a
dream. I want that to happen so bad. I've talked about that so many times on this show.
I mean, I think that if they ever do that, they should just let a different actress do it at this point. I think that Emma Stone has better things to do with her time, and I'm grateful for it because no one takes bigger, bolder, more crazy chances than Emma Stone does right now. She uses her clout like exactly how you want a movie star to, in my opinion. So let's let an exciting, 25-year-old get that chance. But I would absolutely love for her to appear in live action. And there's certainly rumors of that all the time with the Tom Holland movies that maybe we'll get that somewhere. But I thought that if we were going to get anything, it would be an expansion of this character. And so we didn't get a solo movie, but we did get her holding really as like, 1A on the call sheet. If, it's an animated movie, there isn't a call sheet, but you know what I mean? So,
Mhm.
and I think that was absolutely the right call because, like I said, she's just it's also really smart because what this movie is doing, right? It's trying to catch us up on what we've missed, but it also is trying to set up this whole world of like infinite spiders like patrolling the multiverse and everything like that. And for plot reasons, Miles has to be on the outside of that. And I think it's smart to not just have like him be introduced to it in the moment where he is without any bearings. I think that it's smart to have characters that we already know and care about be immersed into that world already and then have that kind of feed into the conflict at the center of the film. So I think that was a really good use of Spider-Gwen, but I think people were just excited to see her and they absolutely delivered on what I think we were looking for with that character.
Yeah. And also on that note, so we got a whole bunch of other spider characters here as well. So, the first movie we saw this collection of them, which included Spider-Man Noir, Penny Parker, Spider-Ham, and Peter B. Parker, which we mentioned before, and obviously Gwen. Now in this one, the focus is on Miles and Gwen. We have Peter B. Parker back here again, now in a better place. He's married. He's got a baby, Mayday Parker, who's a little spider baby. And it's a lot of fun with her. But, he very much takes a back seat in this. He's very much in a much more smaller supporting role here. And I think that was actually smart because then we get to elevate some other new spider people that we haven't seen before. So obviously we have Spider-Man 2099, Miguel O'Hara, who's kind of leading the Spider Society here and is one of the antagonists of the movie. But we also get a few other really cool ones. So we get Issa Rae as Jess Drew version of Spider-Woman. And this is an interesting version because it is not necessarily the Jessica Drew from the comics, who's a white woman, but instead they were influenced by, and I had to look this up, but they had they used to back on there used to be like on Sesame Street or something. They used to have like a Spider-Man segment, and there was a character in that Sesame Street segment who was called Valerie the Librarian, and she ended up having they did like a Spidey Super Stories like spin-off thing for like easy to read comics for kids, and they brought Valerie the Librarian in there. And there was a story where she becomes Spider-Woman, and so this Jess Drew was inspired. It was like a mix of the Jessica Drew Spider-Woman, but also this Valerie the Librarian version, which was kind of a cool thing. And they did, and she's basically an original character. Like she's got this really awesome motorcycle. She's actually pregnant, which actually comes from a storyline that Jessica Drew was involved with in the comics. But then we also get Karan Soni as the Spider-Man India, Pavitar Prabhakar. And he is also a character from the comics, but his design is very different. I really like the design they do here. Karan Soni was hilarious. I thought he had great lines in that. But then we also get probably my personal favorite was Daniel Kaluuya as Hobie Brown or Spider-Punk. And the talk about the different art styles they use. Like the art style they used on him with kind of like the punk aesthetic was so cool. I really dug him as well.
Yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I don't believe it was this Sesame Street. I believe it was the Electric Company
Okay.
that's live action Spider-Man was on. Similar show back in the day. But yeah, so I think that it was really great that they were able to expand the amount of people. I was a little bit worried because on the one hand, like we already had like a really fun group of people into the Spider-Verse, and they mostly don't come back in this one. And I thought like, oh well, that was like a fun group. But okay, let's be open-minded. Let's try out different things. And I was a little bit worried ahead of the release. There's a lot of promotion around like, oh, this one's going to be in it. Oh, this is going to be in it. Like they're going to have like, that the guy from the animated show from like the early, like mid 2000s that everybody liked. He's going to be there. We got like Samberg as, Ben Riley,
Scarlet
the
Spider, yes.
overdramatic 90s movie, 90s comic book version of Spider-Man, right? So like I was like, okay, is this going to be a little too gimmicky? And I think that they handled it just right. They gave us tons of fun cameos that really made us feel like, okay, this is all the Spider-Man that exists in the multiverse, right? So many fun, like honestly, when I watched it the first time around, I was like, I wish that I was watching this at home, that I could like freeze frame and see all of the different interesting spider variants on the screen. And then this time around, I did watch it at home and I did not stop it because I was so engrossed in the story. I didn't want to slow things down. But maybe on my third viewing, I will because there's so much creativity. I'm sure a lot of it is sourced from actual comic
Mhm.
material, but I bet it seems like some of it has to just be out of their own imagination too, because there's literally thousands of characters in the background. And the one, of course, that got the most attention as a cameo was the Donald Glover as the Prowler, which was a
Yep.
fun cameo. What do you think? I don't mean to, like derail your show, but I'm curious. What do you think about the way that they used live action components to live action references? They like we get some clips of Spider-Man, the Tom Hardy, not Tom Hardy, the Tom Holland Spider-Man is referenced,
Hmm.
right? The Tobey Maguire Spider-Man we see a little bit of. We see the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man a little bit, and then of course the Donald Glover live action cameo. Were you happy to see the live action piece? Do you think it was kind of like a little jarring in an animated world to see live action incorporated?
No, I thought it worked really well. I thought they managed to incorporate it in fun little ways, like especially the little thing when the Spot goes into the Venom verse and sees Mrs. Lee, I think is her name is, the one who runs the convenience store that Eddie is always going into. Um that was a fun little moment. I loved seeing Donald Glover dressed as the Prowler, so he's actually wearing the costume this time. We even get Alfred Molina's voice over an imprisoned animated version of Doc Ock. That was cool, and just the little, yeah, all the little references. I thought they were great. I thought they gave us just enough without like overdoing it, right? So, like for example, you compare it to The Flash, which is another which I think is a textbook example of how not to do these types of cameos in the multiverse, because that it was just like crass and they didn't make sense at all. But here I thought they all worked very well. So we're given just a little bit here and there and little pieces, and it's just the right amount without like derailing stuff. So I thought they did a good job with it. What did you think of those?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good too. When I first saw it, I was like, "Oh, I don't know. I don't know if I want like this to contain everything that ever existed in Spider-Man, like kind of like let it be its own thing a little bit." But I think that they used it as a way to ground the story first and foremost. It wasn't like a gimmicky thing that
Mhm.
just kind of was like, "Oh, look, it's Andrew Garfield crying." It's like they actually made it matter in terms of the plot. And I thought that as long as they grounded it in the story, it was okay because there's also lots of different types of animation running around. Like we got the Lego Spider-Man, we got the stop motion Spider-Man, we got all different kinds of Spider-Man happening. So the one thing that I wish that we got, which I would have loved, I listened to Dan Slott talk about some of the things that he included in his Spider-Verse run, and there is one thing that would have been really fun, which was sort of at one point in the Spider-Verse comics, they have to go to the universe, which is the kind of weekly like comic that would go in like the newspaper.
Oh yeah,
Um,
the daily strip that Stanley used to do.
yeah, the daily strip, and like the way that the daily strip is set up is because it's like it's expected that you're not gonna be reading that every single day because it's a daily strip, right? So like the first square in the strip, like it kind of resets what already happened, and then you get one piece of forward momentum, and then it's kind of a teaser for the next. And so like Dan Slott's imagination was that like the universe as exists in that world is just moving at a tremendously slow pace. And so like I guess at one point the villain gets stuck there and it's like incredibly frustrating because like nothing is happening because everything's moving so slow. That I thought that would be a fun idea to kind of like stick into this movie too. But you know, they put in a lot of other fun stuff, so it's okay.
Maybe we could see that in Beyond the Spider-Verse since we're getting the third movie eventually at some point. So
Yeah, they eventually.
supposedly next year. Supposedly it's coming in 2027. We'll see. But yeah, I also wanted to quickly shout out Andy Samberg as Ben Riley Scarlet Spider. I love the Scarlet Spider. I love Ben Riley. He's a character who has not gotten his due in the comics, I think, due to his association with the infamous Clone Saga story. But it was really cool seeing him in here and just like the harrowing past thing, like which is such a was such a night. Not it wasn't actually so much a Ben Riley thing, but it was very much a '90s thing. So it worked out well.
Yeah, I was a little bit honestly upset that we didn't get a little bit more of him. I feel like they could have given us a little bit more. I wouldn't want a lot more. I wouldn't want him in it as much as like Spider-Ham was in it in the first one, for instance. But I could have done with like one more scene before he gets tossed into somebody's universe.
Absolutely, yeah. We're gonna take a quick break, then we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more about this. Blast off into a new universe with Corsairs, a new sci-fi space opera serial by me, Percival Constantine. In these adventures, join the crew of the Corsair, a group of intergalactic mercenaries, as they struggle to survive in the depths of corporate-controlled space. If you're a fan of Firefly, Cowboy Bebop, or Guardians of the Galaxy, then you're going to love Corsairs. Subscribers to my Patreon get 2 new episodes a week, while free members get 1 new episode a week starting in December. Patreon offers new subscribers a 7-day free trial, but I'm also throwing in another perk. If you sign up with the coupon code SCP, you'll get 90% off your first month. So visit patreon.com/Percival Constantine and join in the adventures. We all love superhero movies and TV shows, but what about the comics that inspired them? Marvel, DC, Image, and more have provided the template for the movies and shows we all enjoy watching, and it's important to honor that tradition by buying and reading comic books. Superhero Cinephiles is proud to be an affiliate of mycomicshop.com. It began as a small mail-order business operated by junior high school student Buddy Saunders all the way back in 1960, and has been operating on the internet since 1997. My Comic Shop has new releases, value packs, back issues, trade paperbacks, comic art, regular auctions, and a whole lot more, including 35% discounts on pre-orders. You can also sell your own comics or utilize their consignment services. You can even create your own want list of comics you're searching for. To get started, check out our affiliate link in the show notes or on the superherocinephiles.com homepage. And we're back, still talking about Spider-Man Beyond the, or not Beyond the Spider-Verse, Across the Spider-Verse. Beyond the Spider-Verse is next year, hopefully. I thought it was fun that they used the Spot in this, and I just got to shout out his name, Jonathan Own the Spot, Johnny on the Spot. Just one of those gimmicky little comic book names.
That's great. We love a comic book name like that. Another great comic book name, Peter Parked Car, got a special cameo. That was one that I definitely was excited to see.
I didn't even notice that. That's cool.
Yeah, it's so funny. He is of course a car that is Spider-Man themed. But yeah, I loved that. I think that the Spot is interestingly deployed here. When I watched the first time, I wasn't really thinking about the Spot very much when I left the movie. Watching it a second time, I was like, oh, okay, so they do establish him they do spend a decent amount of time establishing him as a villain and then like leaving him off as a big threat in whatever the sequel is. I gotta say, when I watched it the first time, though, so many things were happening, and I was so caught up in the emotional story, which is very much grounded in what's going on with Miles and his parents and Gwen and her dad, that the Spot really, it was easy to overlook what Jason Schwartzman was doing as the Spot. But I really enjoyed him. I think he's fun. I hope that they have a good kind of second half to this story, because this is definitely the one that most feels incomplete versus like everything else that we got, or at least it feels like we hit an emotional payoff to a lot of the stories in part one, even if it is leaving us on cliffhangers.
Yeah, the first time I watched it, I also didn't pay much attention to the Spot. He's, always been kind of a joke character in the comics, except for when Mark Waid handled him in Daredevil. But yeah, he's never really been much of an interesting character. Even when he appeared on Spider-Man 94, they kind of treated him as a joke there as well. Uh, and this latest time I was watching it, I really kind of was vibing a little bit more with him and with what Jason Schwartzman was doing. And it is cool how they do kind of play him as this joke at first, but he slowly evolves into something more serious as time goes on, which makes sense because those powers are pretty significant. So at first, when I heard that they were using the Spot, I'm like, really? You're going to use him after you had this awesome depiction of the Kingpin in the first movie? And I was, honestly, in the second viewing, I was vibing a little bit more with him, and I think they actually did a really good job of incorporating him in and using him as kind of the impetus that ends up leading to all this chaos that's happening, which is also kind of Miles's responsibility as well. So again, we're leading into those whole power and responsibility themes that are so crucial to the Spider-Man mythos.
Absolutely. And also like really fun kind of exploration of his powers, like him not quite understanding how his spots work and the comedy in the first act of him kind of trying and failing to steal the ATM machine is pretty solid. Him kicking himself in the butt is very silly. And then it builds into something that genuinely feels threatening and terrifying. So I think they did a good job of balancing what could feel kind of silly and then like how it could become a big boss by the end of the first half of this movie.
And something else you had said earlier on, you said that you like the multiverse stuff. I too, I'm always a sucker for the multiverse stuff, despite the bad rap it gets on the internet. And so, and one of my, very, very minor complaints about the first movie is, I wanted to see more Spider-Verse stuff, and they gave us more Spider-Verse here. And it's funny, as I was rewatching it last night, I was thinking to myself, man, I am so invested in Miles and Gwen and what's going on with them and their relationship and their individual struggles and everything that when we got to the multiverse stuff, part of me was thinking, let's go back to the Miles and Gwen stuff.
Right. Yeah, well, and listen, that's the sign of good writing, right? I mean, that means that you're doing a good job. You're not just letting the bells and whistles of the multiverse kind of, carry you through. But I think it also does a good job of exploring the multiverse in a way that only something animated can, where it
Yeah.
really takes advantage of the idea of like every single world looks different. We have a different animation style. We have the colors feel different. The movement feels different. The characterization feels different. Everything feels so alive and distinct. And if you compare that to a movie that I liked a lot, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, that did a terrible job of exploring the multiverse,
No, I
unfortunately.
agree. Like I'm a defender of Multiverse of Madness, but yeah, they did not really lean into that concept as well as they could have.
Like all that, you got one montage where they turn into paint for a while or whatever, and then they go to a universe where everybody wears a hat. It's like it's
Yeah.
really embarrassing compared to what they do in this movie.
Yeah, I think Sam Raimi just didn't really care about the multiverse stuff, so he was just kind of making jokes of at his expense as a result. But yeah, here they use I don't think any movie that I can think of, at least not in recent memory, has utilized the multiverse concept as well as this one has.
And we've gotten now enough that I think you could say that definitively. But yeah, but here's the thing, like you were saying, as interesting as that is and as well done as it is, the thing that grabs you most is the Miles stuff, is the Gwen stuff. And I want to give a shout out to not only, Shamik Moore and Haley Steinfeld, who are Miles and Gwen, but also, their parents in this movie. Like Brian Tyree Henry, excellent in the first movie as Jeff Morales. A bit less to do here, but still, I think very strong in the scenes that he has. Like, honestly, he made me laugh the most probably out of anybody. His like very subtle, like underplayed reactions to different things
Oh
happening
yeah.
totally killed me. And Luna Loren Velez, who plays Rio Morales, just absolutely killed me. Just like the scene that she has with him on the roof, the monologue, and yeah, like that is clearly designed to like tug at the heartstrings, but so well executed. The kind of like promise me that you're gonna take care of the little boy that I've been taking care of this whole time, and the way that ends up tying so directly into the conflict in a way that could feel contrived, but instead feels so earned. So that way you really feel the presence of her throughout that and throughout the third act of the movie, basically, where she isn't present. Like you really feel her and her concerns for Miles. It's just so well done. And it's a big part of it is the writing, but a big part of it is Velez's performance. I think she's really undersung in this cast of thousands.
Yeah. Dude, I'll tell you, like as my kids get older, the parent child dynamics in these movies, they hit so much harder. And
I
especially
can
like
only imagine.
the scene in the beginning when Gwen and George are talking, and he says, "Are you still or I hope are you too punk to give your dad a hug?" or something along those lines. And then it's like boom, she zips over and she hugs. My God, that killed me there. And I'm just like, I look at my daughter and she's still very lovey-dovey right now, but I can definitely see a point in not that far off because she's gonna be 5 soon when she's gonna be like, I don't have time for that.
It's true. And then now all you need to do is send her into a portal to another dimension for 6 months while she's on the run from the law, and then she'll come back and she'll hug you right away.
Yeah, there you go.
But yeah, I also like Shea Wiggum plays her dad. And I mean, Shea Wiggum plays this type of character in basically everything now, where he's like a gruff sort of police officer or police officer adjacent guy who's a bit behind the times, a bit too like enmeshed in how things are supposed to be instead of how things need to be for our hero. And sometimes that could be pretty cartoonish, like in Mission Impossible, the later Mission Impossible movies. But here he absolutely nails the assignment. He's so wonderful as Captain Stacy, and tough act to follow from Dennis Leary. So
No, my God, Dennis Leary, his performance in The Amazing Spider-Man, that is still like probably my favorite performance in that movie. He was completely on fire in that version.
Wow. Okay. Well, Emma Stone is my favorite
Well, I
performance in
mean,
that
yes,
movie, but
okay,
he
yeah,
is
fair, fair. He's a close second,
he's
yeah.
pretty good. He's very few people could pull off the dying words being like, "Peter, please break up with my daughter." Now I'm dead.
When we covered that the first time I watched that movie, I'm like, "Man, that's you can't put that on that guy. What are you doing?"
It's
And then after I had
crazy.
after my daughter was born, I'm like, "No, I get it. I get it.
Oh, you were like, yeah, I would absolutely do the same thing. That would be my dying words as well.
Absolutely, yes.
Fair
Justice for
enough.
George Stacy."
But
Uh,
here, I think he's wonderful. I really like Jay Wiggum, and I hope they find a way to kind of bring him back into the next movie. I don't know if he will based on where things are, but I would love to see him be in the action a little bit.
Yeah, same here. And just one more final shout out, like Daniel Kaluuya. First off, I didn't realize it was him, and I'm thinking like, man, he's doing a pretty good job with this accent. And then I looked him up, and he's actually from London, which I never knew, which blew me away.
Oh, really? Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I mean, I first saw Daniel Kaluuya all the way back on Skins. He was one of the original kids on Skins, which is a British kind of teen soap opera that was really big for millennials of exactly my age. And a lot of famous people were in that first original cast, including Nicholas Hoult, most notably. But he was there as he was Posh Kenneth, and as was his
Wait,
character name.
Nicholas
And
Holt is British. My God, you're blowing my mind now.
yeah, Nicholas Hoult is British.
Oh my
Also,
God.
he's like incredibly charismatic on that show. He's like steals everybody's girlfriend, which is funny because in the future he is like professionally cucked in every Hollywood movie now. But back in the day when he was a British teen, he was stealing everybody's girl. So, never forget Nicholas Hoult.
I mean, after seeing him as Lex Luthor, I could see him doing that. I could definitely see that side of him. So that makes sense. But yeah, and just me and my personal politics, like Daniel Kaluuya was speaking a lot to me, like when he's like, "Oh, this is a metaphor for capitalism." Like, you're not wrong.
Speaking truth to power, man. He
Yeah.
was not afraid. He quit. I like that. Like he quit, and then he kind of helps Gwen, by dropping off his little, communicator, dimensional portal, wristwatch thing, to help save the day. So yeah, I expect us to get more of him, but if we don't, he made as big of an impression as he needs to, and also, again, a really cool, aesthetic choice too
Mhm.
in terms of the character design.
Dude, that's another one I hope we get to see in another form. Like there's been talk of like a Spider-Punk spinoff. I would love to see that, especially if you get Daniel Kaluuya to play him.
Now
Um,
he's a character from the Spider-Verse comics as well, right?
yes, yeah, I believe he debuted in the Spider-Verse comics, and I'm pretty sure it was also Hobie Brown in the comics as well, that version, who was the original Prowler in the main comics.
Now we're gonna have to be, ending pretty soon, but I wanted to ask briefly, like, what are your expectations for this third movie? Because obviously it leaves us off on this big cliffhanger. Miles is in the wrong universe. He's kidnapped by a evil Prowler version of himself and his uncle Aaron. And everyone else is in the other universe trying to track him down. Gwen is assembling a team of our old favorites to try to help Miles out. Like, huge kind of, Empire Strikes Back level cliffhanger. What are you hoping for when we finally see this movie that has now been delayed by like 5 years?
You know what? I'm not gonna pontificate too much on like what I hope they do story wise, because honestly, at this point, I didn't know what we were going to get with Into the Spider-Verse, and I loved what we got. I didn't know what we were going to get with Across the Spider-Verse, and I loved what we got. So at this point, I'm very content to just leave that to them and to let them surprise me. I will say though, there are some cameos that I would love to see. And I'd mentioned the Japanese Spider-Man with his giant robot at the beginning of the show. I would love to see if he popped up in some form. That would be pretty cool. Um, if we could get Nicholas Hammond pop up as well, as like an older Spider-Man or something, that would be cool as well. Because he had wanted to be like involved in some of this other Spider-Verse stuff, and he hasn't had a chance to. So I think it'd be cool if we get to see him. Um, any of that stuff, I think, just like some fun cameos. I would love to see more, a little bit more of Andy Samberg as the Scarlet Spider as well, but that's just the 90s kid in me. So but for the most part, story wise, I am content just to let them surprise me. How about you?
So for me, I don't care about the cameos. I feel like we got all the cameos we need. Anything else is gravy as far as I'm concerned. I'm excited that we might get, more of the guys from part one back. So, a little bit of Spider-Man Noir, a little bit of Spider-Ham. That would be fun. But for me, I'm really interested in where they're going to go with the story because they set up this whole idea of like canon event and we have to, which to me, I found that to be like a very fun sort of meta commentary on like the way that people talk about comic book properties and comic book movies. Like these are things that you can't change, and it's so important to the canon that this character acts this way and these things happen and everything. And obviously, you set something like that up in the first movie in order to tear it down in the second one and subvert our expectations. You say like, okay, a character is a captain that's close to Spider-Man. He has to die. It's a canon event. It has to happen. Like, obviously, Miles is motivated for that not to happen. I'm very curious how they kind of end up nailing the end part of that story where it feels emotionally fulfilled. I don't think we're going to get a point where Miles has to watch his dad die. So I'm very curious what we will end up seeing and how and what ultimately that means for what Spider-Man can mean. Because I think, the big part of Into the Spider-Verse was like anyone can wear the mask, right? Reclaiming that idea. We're off of the Andrew Garfield stuff of like we have magic spider blood and whatever. Like we're not doing that. It's anyone can wear the mask, right? That was the modus operandi of the first movie.
Mhm.
So these movies, it feels like the modus operandi is like canon is bullshit. We live in a multiverse. Anything can happen. Embrace your story. Don't be a change to canon. And but I'm very curious to see how they land that plane.
Yeah, I think I echo that. I think that's kind of the direction that they hinted that they're going in, is like, that there is the whole Terminator line, right? There's no fate but what we make, that whole thing. I think that is very much going to be a theme of Beyond the Spider-Verse. But anyway, Alex, I know you've got a hard out, but we really
I
appreciate
do.
you coming on and talking. So before you jump out, why don't you tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Letterboxd for my movie takes at Media Thinkings. You can follow me on Blue Sky for basically everything else. That's at Alex Marcus on Blue Sky. All of my links to all of the stuff that I do is usually posted over there. Go to the Pop Break, go to thepopbreak.com, click on the podcast tab over there. You'll see all the shows that I supervise, all the shows that I'm on, including, like I said earlier, Bill versus the MCU, which we're doing 8 months of Spider-Man. So if you like Spider-Man, come with us once a month. We're every month for 8 months. We're talking Spider-Man. It's going to be great. Previously, we've done lots of other fun stuff, talking about like the Fox movies. We talked about the X-Men stuff. We talked about the original MCU. We did all the animated stuff. We've been doing this for 4 years. This is our fifth year, so we've got a lot of good Marvel content in there. Also, It's Complicated. We're a year into It's Complicated. Me and my friend Manish Mathur. That's on its own feed. It's Complicated, a Tom Holland podcast, wherever you get podcasts. We've been covering his entire filmography, starting with The Impossible, going all the way through all the MCU stuff, all of the animated movies he's done, the weird sort of like indie films that everyone forgot about or didn't know existed. We are talking about every single one every other week, so definitely check that out as well.
Okay. People can check out that stuff. We'll have links to some of that stuff in the show notes. I've also been a guest on the Pop Break a few times. One time on Bill versus the MCU. I've also been on the Batman by the Numbers a few times, including most recently where we did some rankings of the Superman cast of supporting characters, which was a lot of fun. We've had Chris on there, who's been on here as well, and Anthony, who's also been on here, and Dan has also been on here as well. All of them were on that show too, so we had a lot of fun running down those rankings. Definitely check that out. And as for us, superheroceinephiles.com is the website, Super Cinema Pod on Instagram and Threads, and superherocinephiles.com on Blue Sky as well. Guys, thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. Superhero Cinephiles is produced by me, Percival Constantine. The show is created by myself and the late, great Derek Ferguson, our host emeritus. Visit us on the web at superherocinephiles.com to listen to past episodes or find out how you can be a guest yourself. Support the show by visiting our advertiser links or click the Buy Me a Coffee link on the website to make a one-time donation. We are Super Cinema Pod on both Instagram and Blue Sky, so please be sure to follow us. We'd also appreciate it if you could rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and share us with your friends.
Thank you for listening. And as always, good night, good evening. God bless.